Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. This week we have a very special podcast for you. I teased it on the last one. We're, surprise, going to go over the Danish Olympic results. And I think that really the goal here on my end is twofold. I mean, first off, I don't like to talk about things on the podcast that I don't know anything about, or if I do, then I'll just have somebody who knows something about it to educate me. But in terms of national federations and having some understanding of the facts on the ground, Denmark is a topic I feel comfortable discussing. And I've got somebody who knows even more than me to discuss it with. It's Ricki Clausen here on the other end. So there's that end of it, the specific end of it, Denmark, of course. And then, but in general, I mean, I think about the context in which you know something and try to apply, if you're listening, try to apply some similar sort of critical thinking to the results of what you've seen here over the last period of time. Because you're going to have, if you're listening to this and you're a coach, you're going to have your own. Maybe you're in the US and you're in a local swimming committee and you want to look at what are the results like in your local area. You're in another small country like Denmark where you can sort of draw some of the same comparisons. But I've gone on long enough without introducing my guest coming back. Is this the third time, Ricki, or is this only the second time? It feels like 3 times.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a positive, but yeah, that's.
And you're a coach on Herlev Swim Club, which is a greater Copenhagen area swim club in Denmark. You've just had a very favorable swim article written about the results of a young swimmer on your team at the short course championships. So you're excited about that. Things are going well in your estimation there in Herlev?
Yeah, things are going well. We managed to keep together the coaching team, so we're still 5 people, 4 of us somewhat older with some portion of gray hair around the team, and I think it's working really well. And the swimmers have now adapted to the fact that there isn't one head coach who knows everything.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about that, listen to the last podcast with myself and Ricki. We go over all that structure, and it's exciting, yes, for me. The people listening to the podcast know that I was really hopeful for this model. So the fact that it's still going, and not just going, but things seems to be going really, really well competitively as well, I find that really encouraging. But we're not here to talk about Herlev. Let's talk about Danish swimming. And just for context sake, we're going to get into the most recent Olympic results, but we want to provide the broader picture of what's going on. So we're going to provide a sort of brief history of, I just tried to think about what we were going to call this before we started, the centralization era of Danish swimming over the last 25 years. So do me a favor, get us started, Ricki, and take us back to the beginning of the centralization era here.
Yeah, I can start by doing a spoiler and saying that I'm going to provide the background of why our Olympic results weren't very good this year.
In your opinion, yeah.
And that's important to state also. This is in my opinion. I'm a club coach. We didn't have any swimmers on the Olympic team, so I'm talking freely from my own experience and from the way I see the system. And we've had a long history of centralization in Denmark. So the way we're structured is that we have a governing body for the elite swimming. We of course have our national federation, as you have in the US. You have USA Swimming. We have the Danish Swimming Federation. So that's basically the same. But above the Danish Swimming Federation, we have what we call Team Denmark. And originally, Team Denmark was created to assist the federation. So in swimming, in kayaking, in football, in handball, and so on, to assist with experts. And along the way, Team Denmark has gotten to be a more political organization. So basically, Team Denmark are deciding whether or not the results of the Danish Swimming Federation are good enough to keep getting funded by Team Denmark. So they're like a judge and jury on the results for the national federation.
The equivalent we would have in the US probably be the USOC, the US Olympic Committee.
Yeah, but we also have an Olympic committee.
Okay, so this is now yeah, you're right. This is confusing.
Yeah. But in everyday life, we have Team Denmark, and they actually what they were put into the world to solve, namely a lack of experts and a lack of funding to the right experts in the federations, which was that's a cumbersome task to have really good biomechanics hired, for example, for one federation, right? They actually have solved that, and they have tremendous experts. I've been lucky enough to work with some of them, and nothing wrong with the experts. It's the political layer and the political role that Team Denmark has adopted. That's a problem for the structure we have. And again, in my opinion. So what happens every year is that the federations have to put forward goals for the Olympiad and for the next year coming up. Yep. And then Team Denmark have to recognize those goals and say, oh, that's fine. You get the funding according to these goals. So basically, the issue here is that if you can get lower goals accepted, then Team Denmark are happy. As long as they're happy, you get the funding. So it's not as much about the results as getting the right goals approved.
Yeah. So you're incentivized. What you're basically saying is you're incentivized as a national federation to get the least ambitious possible goals approved, because then you can achieve them and justify your funding that's drawing down from Team Denmark.
Exactly. And that funding is used primarily to fund the National Training Center, which has existed for 25 years. And they, in 25 or 27, 28 years ago, we had a very, very successful, still in my opinion, one of the best Danish international swimmers ever, Mette Jacobsen. She was very young and she didn't have a club to train at.
Yeah.
And her coach, Jens Glavin, was the national coach. So they made, they long talked about having this center like the AIS in Australia. So they went down to Australia and the Australians said, hey, this is working. This is working well.
Even though many Australians would say AIS doesn't work at all.
Exactly. Why is there no AIS really in the same anyway like that there was that time?
Okay. Let's but it was an idea. Right.
Yeah, it was an idea, and an idea that Team Denmark bought immediately, and they set up the National Training Center, and it's been kept alive for a long period where the results weren't very good. And then we had foreign coaches, as we talked about in the last podcast, and the results started to improve. So now we have the problem. We have the Team Denmark that are used to getting really good results with the swimmers training on the National Training Center. So Team Denmark, we are called a top federation. So they're like 3 or 4 divisions.
So there's tiers of
exactly,
federations.
Tiers,
exactly. Swimming's in the top tier.
And in order to remain in the top tier, we've had to get Team Denmark to accept that we're now not aiming for medals, we're aiming for finals. Which makes sense. We're a small country and stuff. So nothing wrong with that. But the basic incentive is that if Team Denmark approve the goals you have for the next Olympiad and you reach those goals, you stay in the top tier. So I'm not saying that people are trying to do this, but in theory, this means that if you can get lower goals approved, you keep your funding.
I see.
So in that respect, it seems to me that the federation are always trying to talk things down, not to get the swimmers too nervous, and they're also trying to talk things down in accordance to Team Denmark, because if we set high goals and we don't reach them, we lose our funding.
Yeah,
that's basically how it works from where I'm sitting.
And we've reached the point where I'm a little bit beyond my own understanding. I'm sort of familiar with that part of it, but are the goals public? Or is this sort of like something you just sort of find out by rumor, what goals were set and accepted?
I think the goals overall are public, but the individual goals of the swimmers are not public, which makes sense. But
yes.
But when we go out in an Olympiad like this one, 2 years before, and say we have a dream of medals, well, there was only one swimmer who, in our wildest imagination, could ever get a medal, and that was Pernille Bloom. Yes. So everybody knew, well, that has to be Pernille. Nobody else would get near a medal. Yeah. So we made a structure that will never work because we have a national training center they need to prove that the idea with the national training center is the right one, because they get the funding for the national training center primarily. So that's where the real problem arises, because the national training center has to perform better than the clubs, or at least to the same level. So we're in competition with our own federation.
Yeah.
So the clubs are competing with the national training center. They're competing for the swimmers. They're competing for the results. So again, in theory, I'm not putting any malicious intent on anybody here, but in theory, if you want to keep funding for the national training center, it's important that the training center outperforms the clubs. You can outperform the clubs in two ways. Either you can excel, or you can hope that the clubs are not doing well. That's the two ways you can outperform the clubs, right?
Right.
So I'm not saying that anybody's hoping that the clubs are not performing, but in theory,
yeah,
if the elite center are doing better than the clubs, that's one parameter. And the second is, if we can lower our expectations enough to make Team Denmark happy, then we'll get our funding.
But
it was never the intent that Team Denmark should be the judge and jury of the individual sports and the goals. It's completely crazy.
Yeah.
How should Team Denmark know what to do in swimming? That's the swimming federation. They're the experts.
Right.
But right now, Team Denmark are acting like the experts in all across the board towards all federations. So they're sitting down saying, okay, we decide what you get next year, according to if we are satisfied with the money that we spend on your elite program, which we think should be structured this way. So what are you going to do? We think the elite program should be structured this way, and we're paying for it. What are you going to say? We think something else. No, maybe not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the federation, together with Team Denmark, and because of this structure, has been removing itself more and more from the clubs and the elite work in the clubs the last 25 years. It hasn't improved things that we got two national coaches who both said out loud that the only place you could perform was if you were at the National Training Center, because they were the only good coaches in the country. That didn't make things better.
Yes, this was Mark Regan and Paulus Wildeboer, yeah.
Yeah, but the model is flawed. No matter who you put into that model, the model is flawed. You cannot succeed with this model.
But wouldn't you say, like, I mean, somebody from the outside looking in, you'd say, yeah, but Ricki, this was the best period of success for Danish swimming ever. How can you say it didn't work? It worked fantastically. Denmark's never done better.
It worked fantastically for those 8 to 10 years. And what's happening now?
Okay, so we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, but so basically, you've done all you can for 6, 7, 8 years to pull all the best swimmers out of the clubs. And the best thing that's happened for the last 5 or maybe 10 years in Danish swimming is we have a new sports director, Lars Robbel, who's just put out an invitation for a new strategy. And he says we need to focus on getting more environments to perform at the top level. So that's like, thank you.
Right.
It's 25 years late, but still, it's better than nothing. So if that's correct, that we need to get more environments to produce the swimmers. And on the other hand, we have a centralized thinking about putting all the best swimmers at the same place. You see, so we need to convince Team Denmark now that the new director of sports is right in that we have to have more environments.
Yeah.
Because they think all the best swimmers should be at the National Training Center. And which our national coach has said that many times. The best swimmers need to train together.
Right.
So it's exciting. What's going to happen the next 2 years? I'm really excited.
What are some examples? You know, you said that the federation had pulled away from the clubs, and you were just starting your coaching career probably as this process was beginning. So what are some examples you could give of how the federation was prior to this sort of more involved with clubs and has retreated?
Yeah, but that was in 1996. So I was the second team coach in Aarhus. So when they started the elite center, so I've never tried anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I don't think I have the solution. But when I think about what's happened the last 10, 15 years, a good example is in 2008 we were Europeans, and I had coached Jeanette Ottesen at that period up to the Olympics, and it was in March 2008, and she was qualified for the Olympics. And I had a young swimmer in my group also, who could only swim 50. She qualified for the semifinal in the 50, and she didn't swim the 200, and she swam the 100 and was 35th or something. A young swimmer called Ricki Pedersen. So
this is the world record holder for quite a bit of time in the 200 breaststroke. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So she went home from the Europeans, and she wasn't happy about her results. And that summer it was announced that Kim Dietrichsen, who'd been working together with me in Kvik for some years, that he was the new head coach in Odense. And Ricki came to me because I coached her at Europeans and European short course also. And she said, "What about this Kim guy?" And I said, "I think he's perfect for you." And they started out, and she was swimming from a 16th place finish at the Europeans in 2008. 1 year later, she was 6th in the 100 and 7th in the 200 at World Long Course after 1 year with Kim.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Big improvement.
Yeah. And a monstrous improvement.
Right.
And she's then convinced by the national coach, Paulus Wildeborg, to come train at the National Elite Center. And that's what happened every time a swimmer was doing well. They were pulled out to swim at the National Center. So if you have clubs producing swimmers, and every time you have a good swimmer, you pull them away to the Elite Center, then you're gonna, in the long run, you're gonna destroy the environments. And that's what happened the last 10 years. So now we have, I don't know, more places than we had 2 years ago, but there's still not enough places producing swimmers, because we've been doing this the last 25 years. And this shouldn't be held against neither the director of sports or the national coach now, because they're not doing this anymore. But we have a baggage of 20 years.
Right.
So we created a structure in which we have to convince Team Denmark that the National Training Center is a good idea. In order to convince them about that, they need to perform better than the clubs. So what do? Otherwise, you don't get the funding, and you close the center. So it's just a circle going around and round and round and round.
So I have one more. I'm taking on the role of devil's advocate in this argument. So I have one more question, I think, because again, in my own experience coaching in there, one of the things that I found really challenging was that I felt that there was this sort of contradiction in Danish swimming clubs. I mean, I think we're going to get into some of this later, in that I think they're almost unique in the world in terms of how financially stable, not just stable, but like wealthy. Many of these clubs are very wealthy. I worked at one that was insanely wealthy, right? Which is sort of has a reputation for being insanely wealthy. But like, and then at the same time, the structures within the clubs, I felt, were entirely built around age group swimming. And what I like, age group swimming means something a little bit different in the US than Denmark. So I'll explain what I mean there. I felt that like they were excellently constructed for swimmers up to 14 years old. And then swimmers older than 14, it was almost like an afterthought what we were going to do with them in clubs. And the incentive structure, we talk about how Team Denmark has an incentive structure to Danish Swimming Federation has an incentive structure to make sure the National Training Center did better. It almost seemed like, well, look, we're going to set up these clubs so that there'll be 60 kids on the third team, and then 40 kids on the second team, and on the first team there'll be 15 kids. So you'll just keep cutting kids out of the sport at these sort of crucial stepping stones. And then at the top, it'll almost be kind of a burden. Like these will all be massive money losers for your club. And so I thought there was like a disincentive to having good competitive results at the top, or having a good amount of people around. It was sort of like, let's make sure we have as few people making it to the top as possible. And I wonder, is there an argument to be made, like, that's why you need a national training center, because these clubs are only set up for age group swimming, and they haven't been structured to support older swimmers as they get there. Because I felt like I was trying to do that as I was coaching my club, but I felt like I was constantly swimming upstream in my attempts to do that. What do you think about that?
I think to a certain extent you're right, and I think you are probably right on the money in the period where you were in Denmark.
Yeah.
But what's happened for the last 10 years is that the clubs have gone from having 1 or 2 full-time employees in the competitive department to having a director of the whole club, many of the clubs. Yeah. So they are now actually structured. And I can name you 4 clubs right off the top of my head that are spending more money on competitive swimming than they are in the elite center. So it's not anymore an issue that the clubs are not structured to handle competitive swimming. There is, of course, when you're in a club, the National Training Center, they don't have any parents of age group swimmers.
Yeah.
So that's I remember some I think it was Councilman. They asked Councilman if he would do anything different if he should ever coach again, and from the beginning, and he said, I would be coaching at an orphanage, right? So the parents are for sure, they're demanding all kinds of stuff for their children.
Right.
But it's not that the clubs don't have the structure to educate and to train senior swimmers. Your own club, Gentofte, is a good example. They have several swimmers now on the senior level.
Don't bring that up to me, Ricki. Come on, don't rub salt in my wounds.
I'm just saying that.
Stop telling me my ex-girlfriend has a beautiful, handsome new husband. Stop it.
No, but still, Holstein also, which is the biggest club, actually the biggest club in Denmark, not swimming club, but sports club in Denmark. Yeah. They also have 10 competitive coaches working full time, and when they have their seasonal kickoff for the Learn to Swim program, they have 240 coaches there, part-time coaches, right? So, so it's a completely different ball game, and they are structured to do this. I think some clubs are not at a place where they can run a successful senior program, of course. Yeah. But why should those swimmers always go to some central? Couldn't they go to one of 5 or 6 club environments instead? Yeah. Yeah. That's what they're doing in northern Jutland. So many swimmers are going to Aalborg. Now Thisted has actually a really good program, and people are going to Thisted also, but they're not going to Copenhagen at the National Training Center. Yeah, they're going to the environment close to them and where they connect with the coach, and that's the way it should be.
Okay, so let's. I've done enough devil's advocating. Let's get to the Olympic results, because
but you need to continue doing devil's advocating, because I see this sitting from my chair. Yeah, and I've been pulling my hair from around 2001 until 2000.
You've been very consistent.
Then I just 7, 8 years ago, I just gave up. I just resigned and I can't fight anymore. I don't want to fight the federation that's supposed to help me. So please be devil's advocate, because I know that I'm black and white on this issue. So.
Yeah. No, I recruit those people in my life too, because I have a lot of, as people know, I have a lot of things that I'm black or white on, and there's always a little bit more gray than you want to admit, but you still have to stand up for what you believe in.
Let me just round off by saying, can we have an elite center in Denmark funded by the federation? Well, of course we can. Yes. Of course we can. But then we need to structure things together with the clubs. So would you have high performance, I mean global high performance breaststroke girls and freestyle boys training together? No. Why not? Why should they?
Right.
So if you're saying okay, on the elite center we do like they have now, we do freestyle sprint, backstroke sprint for girls, butterfly sprint for girls primarily. Where do we do long distance for boys? We do that in Sigma. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Where do we do? Yeah. Isn't that? So it could work that way. The problem is that in theory, it could work from tomorrow, but we have 20 years of history. Yeah. Sitting right here, right? Right. So it's not just to structure it in another way. The other problem is that we have a national coach who's also working on deck at the center, because the resources are limited. So we have a national coach who is working with swimmers on a daily basis, which means, of course, you get a connection with those swimmers.
Yeah.
I hope you do. I hope you do when you're working with them.
Yes.
So we have a national coach who's actually more interested in the swimmers he's coaching on a daily basis to perform than the swimmers in Sigma or Hello, which is natural with the system we have. It's not his problem. It's the system. We set up a system that can never work. So that's just to round off. We can have a center, but 20 years of, I don't know how we are supposed to get rid of 20 years of bad history. So enough about history.
I don't either. History. Well, we're going to go 6 months ago in history. I'm going to look. So Denmark sent a team, I'm counting here, 9 swimmers to the Tokyo Olympics. And they, we'll give the short summary. They had one swimmer in one race achieve a personal best, right? And in terms of medals and final swims, they had one bronze medal. Pernille Blume, who's the defending Olympic champion in the 50 free. She got a bronze medal in the 50 free. And then I guess the other final would be Sina Bolt in the, or the,
no,
sorry,
she was
just a semi-finalist in the 100 free.
4x100 free.
And the 4x100 freestyle relay. Yeah. What do you think of those results?
I think that if Pernille Blume had gotten corona 2 days before the Olympics, we would have gone from several finals, but no medals in 12, several finals and 2 medals and a lot of semifinals in 16, to no finals and no medals if Pernille Blume hadn't been there.
Yeah.
So if we're counting on one swimmer to deliver our results, then the system has failed because it's too fragile. So Pernille Blume getting a bronze medal was, I don't know, the 50 freestyle. If you gold, silver, bronze, I don't know. She got a medal.
Yeah, I think that's a great result.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So nobody can put a finger on that. But she's not even training in Denmark. So there were no swimmers from any environment in Denmark except for the relay placing in top 8. And had Pernille not been there, we wouldn't have gotten in the final.
Right.
So that's the issue we have here. And the swimmers did they have the right conditions? No, it was shitty. It was corona and they were locked up on pre-camp and their coaches couldn't go to pre-camp. And so they had not very good conditions, but neither did the other countries.
Right.
And was it a bummer to go? Imagine the people going to your first Olympics without spectators. I mean, how heartbreaking is that? I was feeling with those swimmers.
My only comeback to that is it's, they are coming from Denmark, where when the best athletes compete, everybody seems to take both their hands and put them right underneath their butt cheeks so that they can't possibly cheer.
But that's not what you're hoping for when you go to the Olympics.
No, right? No.
So, but of course, 1 PB is abysmal. It's
not good.
You can never ever make that into. If you try to make that into a good result,
right,
then we fail forever. Then we will fail forever, and we will.
Acknowledging that, of course, it's challenging to go a best time at the Olympics, but there's no world in which somebody would set as their goal, well, we've got this team of 9 swimmers and however many swims, I haven't totaled up the swims, but 20, 30 something swims. And we'd like there to be no personal or one personal best out of that, 5% personal bests out of our swims.
And what you need to think about also is that I actually found a place where I could see I'm sorry, it's very impolite during
that's all right. I'll talk over it a little bit.
But I actually found the Danish top 10 placings at Olympics.
Historically.
Yeah, historically. And in 16 we had 9. In 2021 we had 3, and all 3 were Pernille Blume. In 2012
or Pernille Blume on a relay, right? Yeah,
or on a relay. Yeah. In 2012 we had 9 also. So.
But isn't there? So again, the counterpoint to this would be, well, there was this amazing talent bump in Danish swimming where you had Lotte Friis, Ricki, you had Jeanette Ottesen in her prime, you had Pernille Bloom coming up. And so Mia Nielsen, like unbelievable talent boom, like we've never seen before in Denmark. And so of course there was going to be, when all those swimmers retire and Jeanette is no longer at the level that she used to be, then of course that the things are just going to fall off.
Of course. And I wasn't expecting the swimmers going to the Olympics to outperform the 16 team.
Yeah.
Victor Bromer also, who was
I forgot I left him out.
Final the last time, right?
Yes.
So of course not. Of course they weren't expected, but they were expected to improve. And you can have a bad taper. We all tried that. So I'm not pointing at anyone saying, well, this was too bad. I'm just saying the system. I think the system is now, we are now back to having 0 swimmers on Danish soil who are top 10 in the world training. 0. We have Pernille Bloom, she's training in France.
Right.
So what do we do now? What do we do? Because this is not, if you look at it, we have 2.5 years to the next Olympics.
Yeah.
And except for Pernille, it's going to be absolute long shots. With all due respect to Danish swimmers, I'm not going to, even if there was somebody where I thought, oh, maybe that could be a bronze medal, I would never say it here. And I think all the Danish swimmers that are listening or not listening to this will agree it is a long shot to name anybody but Pernille as a possible medal contender.
Yeah. Yes.
So now we have 2.5 years to Paris. We have 6.5 years to Los Angeles. So how do we make sure that in Los Angeles, we will have 4 or 5 people finaling? We cannot control the other nations and we cannot control medals.
Yeah.
But we can control environments, and we can do what we can to have several athletes going for finals. So that we need to start building that now. And I'm like, if we have to be realistic, forget about Paris. It's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Give Pernille everything she wants. Everything she wants.
Right.
If she says, I want to have a yoga teacher showing up at my doorstep every Tuesday morning at 10, make sure there's a yoga teacher showing up every Tuesday morning at 10.
Yeah.
No questions asked. But let's start building a structure that will produce swimmers in 28.
And I think there's 2 things too with this Olympics that I want to draw attention to, that I think, just sort of structural issues at the federation level that need to be addressed immediately. Because again, from my observation is there was almost no clarity on how coaches were going to be selected for the meet, and even down to the 11th hour changes in how athletes were going to be selected. And that creates those 2 things just in isolation create a horrible atmosphere. Because of course, what is the biggest motivation that people have? If you're coaching somebody that has a chance to make the Olympic team, you would like to have a chance to go to the Olympics or go to the pre-Olympic camp, go to something, right? Yeah. And it seemed like, I don't know what the criteria was for doing that. Did anybody know what the criteria was?
No, and I think actually that's the problem, because there can be very valid arguments that Jeanette needs to bring her daughter to pre-camp. We don't know. There can be valid arguments for that. But when her daughter goes, Anne and Annie, and 2 of the coaches that have swimmers on the team are told that they can't go because there's no room. And nobody tells them why they can't go. They're just told there's no room. Yeah. And they see Jeanette's daughter on Instagram running around on the pool deck. And there can be valid arguments, but tell people the arguments. And that when everything
and
is
don't
in the
don't pit swimmers against Jeanette. She's a mom.
Exactly.
You should say, hey, we really wanted her to be able to bring her family with her. She's got a young kid. This is important. But don't punish somebody else to do it. Like,
exactly. Or even say we chose to have Jeanette take her family because we think that's more important than bringing you coaches to a pre-camp when you can't even go to Olympics or something. Just say something.
Yeah.
And then you can disagree, but just tell people what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and we had the whole issue with, and I said this to Stefan, the national coach, because as many people know, I'm all for speaking up, but I'm also for telling the people that I'm speaking up about what I think they have done wrong. Instead of talking about people, I want to talk to them. So I told Stefan also that the whole issue with the relay and the Emily Gandris and Jeanette and stuff, nobody knew what was going on. He said, well, there was a blah, 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 blah. Yes, but that's possible, Stefan, but that's not the way it was taken in by the community.
Right.
And if you invite people to a party and nobody's coming, who has the problem? The one inviting or all the idiots that didn't want to come to the party, right? So, and then we get closer to Olympics and we get to national championships in beginning of July.
Right.
And 2 days before national championships, a press release is made that Bo Jacobsen is chosen to go to Olympics as a coach. And I'm like, but he doesn't have any swimmers on the team. And it turns
just for
out
reference, I mean, Bo Jacobsen is not a full-time coach anywhere in Denmark.
Yeah,
right?
he is. He's a full-time coach in Esbjerg.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But he was.
I'm out of date on my Bo Jacobsen.
Yeah. It's not that he wasn't coaching, and it's not that Bo is not a good coach.
Yes, everybody really respects
one
him.
of the very best. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
But he was picked to go to the Olympics without having a swimmer on the team. And
nobody
that
knows
was
why.
Because but he had once coached Helena, and Helena asked to have Bo on the team instead of her home coach and stuff. And on one side, the argument is valid. The swimmer going picks the coach that she thinks will give her the best results. But this means that the swimmers are now picking the coaches, not the federation. So nobody knows what is the criteria to go as a coach.
Right.
I said to Stefan when I talked to him about it, I said, I'm gonna ask Pernille to Pernille Blume to say I need Ricki to go because her French coach is gonna be there anyway, and I'll pay her 25,000 kroner. That's easy. And it's cheap to go to the Olympics.
Yeah, that's a good value. You get really good value on your investment.
And that's where we are now.
That's where we
are now. And that's the way it is now. If the swimmers get to choose the coaches going, so there's no criteria. And one of the criteria to go as a swimmer is changed 2 days before the selection meet. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And my biggest problem isn't that those decisions were made. My biggest problem is that they were made and nobody knew why.
Right.
So
So you want to say more about the results, or do you want to pivot to the solution piece of this now?
No, but I don't think that anybody in their right mind can look at the results and say that they were satisfactory. Of course not. Stefan is not satisfied. Of course, he also said that when he evaluated the results. I think the important thing now is to look at what do we need to do different. And one of the things actually is it wasn't actually the results that concerned me the most at Olympics. What concerned me the most was an interview with Signe Bro.
Yeah.
After she swam prelims and qualified for the semifinal in the 100 freestyle, where she did her PB and qualified she did our PB. Our one PB.
Denmark's
and
PB.
Qualified for the semifinal, exactly.
She PB'd for the whole country.
And she was interviewed and saying, are you going for the final? And she said, yes, I'm going for the final. I was told by the team, I don't know who on the team, but national coach or somebody, not to put my expectations too high because I would get disappointed, but I'm going for the final. And I'm like, if we're telling swimmers qualifying for a semifinal at the Olympics not to go for the final, what that's what amazed me the most. And that's for me, that's the final nail in the coffin, that we are too caught up in not disappointing people. We're too caught up in not disappointed. Swimmers can't be disappointed. Team Denmark can't be disappointed. All the interviews with the swimmers, except for Signe. I'm not sure, I didn't see everybody, but I saw several interviews, and a lot of people said, I'm just so happy to be here.
Yeah.
And it almost sounded like that was the record they were told to play. Just smile and say you're happy to be there. I know some of the swimmers very well that said, I'm just happy to be here and smile. And I know they were pissed.
Yeah.
Why not tell us that you're pissed? What's wrong with that?
And it seems
it's okay.
That to me seems entirely contradictory to the way that the selection is done. The selection is purposely done to not have tourists on the team. The selection is done with hard enough standards so that there's no way you should be just happy to be there. You're going there because you have a good chance to swim at least twice in the race that you're swimming. Yeah. So that end of it doesn't make any sense. People too, if you're more curious about Sina Pohl, I also have a podcast with her. And I'm very excited because on it, she stated publicly that her goal was to make the semifinal. And so even she could have just said, like, I'm thrilled that I achieved my goal and now I'm going to go for more, like I have that in my back pocket. I did it.
Yeah.
And now, everything from here on out is amazing. I think that's somewhat the same sentiment, but stated differently.
Exactly.
And
it's not because the people that are working with the team are not skilled. It's because we have created a system where the most important thing is to not disappoint Team Denmark.
Yeah. And that's
so please don't stand in the interviews and cry and say that you're pissed and it was a shitty race.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. It's I again, as somebody who has a foot in both worlds, it's also uniquely Danish in a way to me. The process of lowering your expectations so that you're not disappointed. That's like, if I could describe, if I could tell people like one massive takeaway, negative takeaway, I would say, and not in a lot of cases, there's a lot of cases where it's good, but in a sports context, it's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. But a good example is one of the coaches, one of my colleagues in Herlev, he posted, the article with young Nicolas Castella on his Facebook page, and said, well, yeah, this is we're moving ahead in the world, and now SwimSwam, which is arguably the biggest swimming web page in the world, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the guys who was overall responsible for the elite department in one of the biggest clubs, as a reply said, "Oh, easy does it." I'm like, what do you think they told Caleb Dressel when he was 14?
Yeah.
So, well, and that's probably, it's a national culture also, right?
Yeah.
We're experts in putting ourselves down.
My example of it was when I was coaching there, I got selected we had a special year where the European Junior Championships was the European Games in Baku, Azerbaijan. I got selected to go there, and we had like 5 days because of how hard it was to get to Azerbaijan. We had 5 days before the meet started in Azerbaijan. So we had plenty of time to talk and practice and talk and practice and talk some more. And I remember we had a team meeting where we got all our gear and we got a participation medal, because the people in Azerbaijan were like, they were putting money into this as if it was an Olympic Games. I mean, they spent the same amount of money that London spent on the 2012 Olympics, on the 2015, and they spent it in Azerbaijan. So everything went, and they said, in this team meeting, I remember it said, look, you're getting all this stuff, but don't, act as if you've gone to the Olympics or something, which is a fair enough sentiment. But what I saw was, like, I have these beautiful craft shirts from then. And when I was in Denmark, I was embarrassed to wear them because I knew if I'd worn them, somebody said like, oh, Chris, he thinks he's so cool. He went to Azerbaijan. You don't do that. Whereas I can't relate to that in America. You achieve something exciting like that, and it's like, you could just tell people for the rest of your career, yeah, hey, I went to this cool thing and check out this cool t-shirt I got, and here's my participation medal. Isn't that cool? Like, and people are like, exactly. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good work. Not like, don't be so full of yourself, Chris.
No, but how can it ever be something that you as a skilled person will identify as being good for performance.
Right.
To tell people to lower their expectations in order not to.
Right. Right.
Nicholas told me we were at nationals, and after prelims and 200 back, he just looked at me and he said, "I'm going to win it tonight." And I said, "Okay. I think we should talk about how you're going to try to win it instead of just saying, but do your swim down and let's talk about it." And I even thought for 1 second, I thought, "Ooh, I need to lower his expectations." And then I thought, "No, why?
Why?
Go for it." And then he got the silver and he was thrilled. But why put people? I don't understand the argument. I understand it if you have funding, depending on Team Denmark not getting disappointed. Then I understand.
And I understand it in the context of a Danish grocery store, that you shouldn't set your expectations too high for what kind of yogurt you can get. This is the story, because you'll be disappointed, but not in elite sports.
No, exactly.
Okay, so let's pivot.
Yeah.
Beyond that grand cultural shift of expectations, what are some other things, as you see it, that like are essential within the next 6.5 years to change?
I think the Paris campaign is already over. So I don't think we should spend a lot of time and energy on trying to get a strong team ready for Paris. I think we should look at the swimmers that are close to the times, and we should do what we can to help them. But in my opinion, we need to focus on Los Angeles. We cannot build anything on them. I have swimmers thinking about, should we go for Olympics? And if they want to go for Olympics, we need to train now.
For sure.
Not next year. It's too late. You need to go to Worlds, and at Worlds you need to qualify for Olympics. And if you want to qualify for Worlds, that's next year in April. That's 15 months.
Yeah.
How are we going to put up a system, get it in place, get everybody to work together in 15 months? That's crazy. So in an Olympic perspective, I think we should focus on Los Angeles. 2.5 years.
So in a broader strategic perspective, think a little bit longer in the future, not necessarily.
Look at the people that went this time and then ask them, are you going for Olympics? What can we do to help you? What can we do to help your coach? And then that's that Olympic campaign. And if we look further ahead, it's almost as in those years with the foreign coaches that the federation forgot that the members of the federation are the clubs.
Yeah.
So when you have a member organization like a national federation, focus should be on helping the clubs evolve. So I think the federation needs to pull the clubs closer and to get everybody working together around the elite program. Talking together, working together. In Norway, they take all the coaches that have put people on the national team last year and they get them together in the beginning of the season. And they sit them down and say, we were thinking of doing these activities with these swimmers. Who wants to go? Who wants to contribute? Do you have any other things you think we should do? Let's discuss. And they meet somewhere and they have some wine and some good food and they get to know each other. The problem is that we need to work together, but we're also competitors, right?
Right.
You wouldn't have Manchester United, Liverpool, and Tottenham meeting up to plan the season together.
Yeah.
So that's always the problem, that we are actually also competitors. But if we want to excel in 28, we need the clubs to be closer to the federation than they've been for the last 15, 20 years.
And that's an exercise. I mean, that's an exercise in leadership, plain and simple. I've also told the story many times over here that process, there was a good faith attempt at that process while I was in Denmark via Nick Juba, until he insulted some club coaches, and that was the end of that. But there was like almost a full year where we did attempt to get everybody together and sort of working together in some, but it never quite fully realized. And you're right, it would be really challenging to get competitors to do anything cooperatively. That's an exercise in leadership. That's what they're meant to be doing, is leading.
That's what our new Lars Robbel, our new director, needs to. He needs to show the way.
Right.
And looking at what he has put out on the invitation now, I think, Chris, you're very eloquent in Danish, so I'm not sure how to translate sammenhængskraft.
Or,
maybe you can do that. Pulling the force of pulling people together. For
yeah,
this, right?
Cooperation power. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, right? So he's put forward an invitation to a strategic, some sort of strategic something in 2 weeks. Yeah. And the overall headline is that we need to work together on this.
Yeah.
So
synergy. Synergy.
Yeah. Synergy.
There we go.
I'm putting my buck on him and hoping for the best. And it's not, the problem is history. It's not the people that are there now. I think they understand this, but how to do it and how to just turn away from a structure that's not working. That's difficult.
In fact, every person with a swimming background who works in the federation has been a club swimming coach in Denmark, right? I mean, you have Stefan was a club swimming coach in Denmark very briefly, but he was. Jon Langberg, who's the national training center coach, has been was a club coach for a long time in Denmark. So they understand what's theoretically.
Thomas
Stup.
Martin Karup, who's also working in the sports federation, also a club coach. So of course they understand. That's not the issue. The issue is the structure. It's not the people. But it's. I think.
And what does your utopia look like, Ricki? Your utopian vision, like if things were more cooperative, if things were brought together, there's better sort of leadership to get everybody moving more or less in a cooperative direction. What are some things like what are some ways that might look, I guess is my question.
As I have done for the whole duration of this podcast, I'm now talking on my own behalf, not my club, not anybody else.
Tell me what it looks like for Ricki. That's what I want to see.
I think a small country like Denmark because we're spending tremendous resources on elite swimming. So if we can work, I'm not saying we need to work together on an everyday basis, but if we can work more together, arranging camps or stuff, going for training groups, we're going now for 2.5 weeks in February, and we're going to a place where there are 2 other Danish clubs. And of course, we're talking about now, what should we do together? But why are we not sending our boys with other boys and a coach to an all boys camp, for example, or sending the breaststrokers and butterflies to a breaststroke butterfly camp, or working together in that way? We're spending so much money, and every club is doing the same.
Some a lot of duplication.
Yeah, exactly. And some are only away for 10 days, and some are away for 20. But it's still basically the same, right? And we're going to the same places. So I think I think we need to cooperate, and there's the structural problem. We can have a national training center, but we cannot have a national coach who's also training on the national training center. I'm just putting I have a master's degree in organizational theory, right? Yeah. So if you are coaching swimmers and you're also responsible for selecting swimmers for international meets, of course you cannot do that. You cannot just say, well, that's something else. Of course I can defer from my personal opinion. No, you can't. That's called psychotic behavior, if you are able to do that. So I hope you cannot just look away from your personal feelings. Right. So I need a national coach who's not coaching. I need a national coach who wants to coach me. So I think if Stefan wants to coach people, he should be a national training center coach.
Right. If he wants to coach athletes, if he wants to coach coaches, he's in the perfect job to do it.
Exactly. But you cannot do both because we're competitors.
Yeah.
And then why should I spill my beans to a competitor? Exactly. It doesn't work. And it's not the man, it's the structure. It's an impossible task. You cannot coach swimmers and be overall responsible for selecting swimmers. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm thinking we can have a national center if the national coach is, every time he's there to talk to the national training center coach, he's also in Sigma to talk to Sigma's head coach, and he's also in Kvik, and he's also in Aalborg, he's also in Tisted. That way it could work. As soon as he brings out a stopwatch, the structure fails. Of course it does.
Yeah.
If he is not concerned about the swimmers he's coaching on a daily basis to excel, then there's something really wrong. And he cannot be concerned about that if he's the national coach. So it's like it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And that, I think, that is the only way that we can remove ourselves from this them and us national federation, because that's the way Paulus and Mark did it. They were national coaches and they were coaching the national training center, right?
Yeah.
And and Jens Glavin was also. That's the way we've been doing for 20 years, and that's why we are not doing great at Olympics anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I did. That's the whole point of bringing you on here, is to ask you that question. All right. Anything else? Any final thoughts to add before we bring this to a close?
No, I think there won't be any. I actually detest the word disruption, but I don't have an English word that's better for it. There won't be any serious disruption on how we attack this until we learn to commercialize somewhat in Danish swimming. So, and let's see if not I think somebody's trying to do that this spring. So there will be
you or
yeah. Me among other people. So
okay.
We need to make sure that the Danish swimmers don't have to stay in their parents' basement until they're 25 if they want to swim competitively.
Yes.
And if nobody tries to change that, where maybe we're going to have 2 finals next time or 4 finals, but we will never explore the full potential of Danish swimming. And we have 200,000 kids swimming every week.
Unbelievable.
How many countries have 5% of for kids? It's like, I don't know, 20% of the kids swimming every week. Nobody has that.
Yeah.
If we wanna excel,
5% of the whole population is a mind-boggling number. You put that into the U.S. context, we're talking about almost 20 million people swimming.
So we have that, and we are not excelling, and the clubs have a lot of money. So the swimmers need to have a piece of the action also. So we need to do something to make the swimmers financially stable, not independent, not to begin with, but we need them to be financially stable on their own.
Yeah.
It's not okay that swimmers, that national champions, senior champions in Denmark are trying to get a life together with studying and stuff, and they can barely afford a ticket to go to see a movie.
Right.
How are you going to compete against full-time professionals? So
and there's plenty of money involved in the sport to get there. That's the other end of this, is that I think we hit on that a few times here, that there's so much resources that could potentially be leveraged towards all of that. And
let's see what happens. We're a small group now trying to together with some companies to look at how can we actually make the brand of the individual swimmer interesting. How can we make the swimmers earn some money on what they're doing? Not coming from the clubs, because the clubs have a lot of expenses on the elite swimmers. So this shouldn't come from the clubs, and it shouldn't come from the federation. It's not the federation's job to commercialize the swimming. It should never be. They need to be involved because they need to look at the calendar together with the people they want to commercialize. But now there are a bunch of us trying to do something. Let's see what happens.
All right. Well, I think that we have a perfect idea for our 3rd podcast, the one I thought we'd already gotten to. But when we get there, when you got some news on that front, let's come back here and discuss it.
I think in May or June, I will have.
Perfect. Maybe we'll have seen each other, as we're going to discuss right after we finish this.
You never know. You never know.
So thank you to everybody for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll be back again later this week with my friends Eric and Joel to discuss some news across the sport of swimming. RIP Bill Boomer. Want to say that on the podcast today. We should have started with a moment of silence. Seriously. Yeah. You know, Yeah, can't even start doing it because I'm doing my outro and he deserves more than that. But we'll be discussing that more on the next podcast. You can look forward to that. And thanks everybody, and talk to you again soon.